Explain why this is still continuing.
This is continuing because we don't have free teaching education now, so that's why we're still continuing. I can understand essentially why people thought we would stop demanding free teacher-organized education, because we've been at this for, it's going to be 2 years now, taking it back from our anniversary last year. So essentially, it shouldn't be surprising that students are still continuing.
Isn't it worth letting the academic year finish so at least those graduates who want to can actually get the degrees that they've had the money now to be able to do?
I mean, you're talking about a small fraction, right? You're speaking about an elite that can afford to pay their fees, right? So essentially the majority of students at this university, even if they wanted to graduate, they wouldn't be able to get their university scripts or their certificates because they'd be owing fees. And this is something that Wits University does. If you're owing fees, you don't get to graduate. And a lot of these students that are here, including myself, will not be able to graduate even if I do complete the academic program.
But a lot of students we've spoken to have said they would just like to finish because they actually can't afford to do this year again. But they've had grants, they've been able to do it. And this protest is actually stopping them from getting the education that you guys are protesting for.
Essentially what we're saying to those students is we welcome them to join us, right? So essentially we have a large majority that is saying one thing and we have a minority that's saying another. But at the same time, we understand that we can't ignore the complaints of the minority just because they're a minority. What we're saying to them is they must come down and meet with us as fees must fall so we can figure out a strategy of how we can please both camps. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be apologetic about making sure that the majority of students at this university that can't afford to pay fees, that can't afford accommodation or have food, for them to continue protesting, we're not going to be apologetic about that.
Why use violence? There are rocks broken up behind you there, which presumably you're going to start throwing at people outside. Why are you using violence to do this?
At this point in time, I hope that everyone understands that there's a very clear difference between violence and militancy. At this point in time, students will only use militancy when need be. Right? Students have been peaceful. We've been able to protest for the past 3 weeks now without using any militant action until we were provoked and attacked by police. Right? So it will only be when the police attack the students that they will have to defend themselves with militancy. And we know that this will happen because the university has given over the responsibility of safety on campus to the police. And the police have sent out a call to say if we find students gathered in groups of more than 3 people, we will essentially disperse that crowd because they consider that to be a crowd. Now when you look behind me, there's more than 3 people behind me, and all they're doing is singing and chanting peacefully, right? But we do expect the police to attack at them, so they need to be able to be militant and protect themselves. It's not violence. What the police are doing is violence. What we're doing is militancy.
Do you consider throwing rocks at security people who are standing outside the Great Hall? Is that not violence?
At this point in time, that is not violence. That is also a form of self-defense, right? And how we perpetuate that is to say when we as students try to interact with private security, we get beaten up with their shields and their batons. This is something that you don't see on the media because obviously your camera angle is at a very disadvantage.
We were all here. We all saw you throwing rocks at the security guards
yesterday. Whether we threw rocks at the security guard or not it's not important, right? It's all about the fact that we are militant and we're not apologetic about being militant.
But you're saying you're not violent, but yet you're throwing rocks at people.
But we are militant.
So militancy is throwing rocks, but violence isn't throwing rocks.
I'm saying that we are militant and we don't have a problem with being militant.
Okay, what happens now?
At this point in time, we will continue with our program of action for the day.
I mean, longer term though. If this standoff continues, what are you going to do to make your point?
I guess you'll have to see, won't you? Because the problem is we tell the media what we're going to do and then we have more chaos, right? So we have more police deployed, we're essentially strengthening the state at this point in time because it feels as if we're telling them what we're going to do. From now on, the state will just have to see.
You're prepared to talk, though, to try and bring this whole protest
We've been trying to talk to the state. I mean, we've been trying to talk to the Vice-Chancellor. The Vice-Chancellor called us for a university assembly. We appeared, he didn't, right? We asked the Vice-Chancellor to have an imbizo. He doesn't want to have one. So essentially we've been calling to speak to our own management, but the only people they're willing to meet with is the Take Back Wits students, and they're ignoring this majority over here.
What's the block? What's the block in the discussions? What do you want that they don't want to give you?
We want a serious and a practical commitment to them assisting us with fighting for free decolonized education. So essentially what we mean by that is we need them on the ground with us. We need them to march. We need Habib in the front with the parish and the clerks as well, marching to the treasury, for an example. We need them to effectively use whatever means that they can to pressure the state into giving us free education. We want them to go and submit an application for a class action against the government and the Constitutional Court, which is something they can do easily, but they refuse to do it. So we want their practical and physical support and not just commitments and we agree with you in principle. We don't need their principles, we have our own.